This episode is brought to you by Experian. Are you paying for subscriptions you don't use, but can't find the time or energy to cancel them? Experian could cancel unwanted subscriptions for you, saving you an average of $270 per year and plenty of time. Download the Experian app. Results will vary. Not all subscriptions are eligible. Savings are not guaranteed. Paid membership with connected payment account required.
Hey guys, and welcome to the Moms and Murder Podcast, a true crime podcast featuring myself, Mandy, and my friend, dear old Melissa. Hi, Melissa.
Hi, Mandy. How are you?
I'm doing really great. I'm really excited this week because we have a super special guest that we have kind of been talking about a little bit in our Facebook group. We've mentioned this a little bit, but of course I'm talking about Allison Sweeney. She's here with us today. She has picked a case that is your favorite case, right, Melissa?
My favorite case. I was thrilled beyond measure to see that this is the one she wanted to do with us.
Yeah, it's a really good one, so I'm really excited to get into it. And this is going to be a little different than how it's typically been when we've had guests on in the past. This is not going to be an interview. Allison, can I call you Allison or Allie?
Allie, yeah, for sure. I'm not in trouble, am I already?
No.
Also, hi, Allie.
Yes, hi, Allie, and
hi.
welcome. Welcome to the show.
Hi.
This is the level of professionalism we have.
Yeah.
Get ready. So you guys know Allison Sweeney, from things such as Days of Our Lives, Sammy Brady, hosting The Biggest Loser for several seasons, and now you're even doing some stuff with Hallmark, right? The Hallmark mystery movies, Murder, She Baked?
I do. I make mystery movies and romantic comedies for the Hallmark Channel, and I have done a couple of, I did a Christmas movie last year. That was very exciting. I'm a big fan. And so now I'm getting into mystery movies. I have a new mystery series that I am developing, and I can't sort of give anything away yet, but you're going to look back on it and be like, oh, that's why she's here. Just know that we're going to talk about this again.
I thought you were here because we were great friends, but you know.
That too. It's double. It's both.
Equal parts.
Perfect.
Mandy, do you and Allie want to kick off our story this week? What are we covering?
Sure, I will get us started. Today's episode is about the puzzling death of Kathleen Peterson, the lively and popular wife of best-selling author Michael Peterson. Kathleen was born on February 21st, 1953 in Greensboro, North Carolina. She was 48 years old at the time of her death and had already accomplished so much in her life. She was highly intelligent, graduating first in her high school class, and she became the first female ever accepted into the Duke University School of Engineering, which is kind of a big accomplishment, I would say.
She's amazing. I'm like jealous of her. I hate her already.
That's perfect.
By 1975, she had earned a bachelor's degree in civil engineering as well as a master's degree in mechanical engineering. She climbed her way to executive positions at a few companies and finally ended up as the vice president for a company called Nortel Networks, which was a multinational telecommunications and data networking equipment manufacturer. That is a mouthful.
And why I didn't say it.
And that company was based in Ontario, Canada. Prior to her marriage to Michael, Kathleen was first married to a physicist named Fred Atwater, and together they had one daughter named Caitlin. Their marriage ended in 1985, and Kathleen would not marry Michael until 1997.
I mean, I could have a whole separate conversation about being married to a physicist.
Yeah.
What?
Well, that's just like
that must be complicated.
Yeah, that's two like really good brains together. I don't know. That's
Mandy,
like a very strong.
Two really good brains together. That is.
But Caitlin like has the gene pool like nailed. Caitlin is like to be the
luckiest
smart
kid
department.
ever. Yeah.
So, Allie, when did you actually hear about this case? Do you remember what kind of drew you to this one?
So actually it was maybe your friends at True Crime Garage made a list of the best, documentaries. If you're into true crime, you should listen to them. And so I was like, there was a few I hadn't heard, and this was one of them. And I was just entranced by it, mostly because I like I'm fascinated by the fact that you don't know, right? Like that there's all sorts of questions.
Right.
Though I do want to know, like, you know, I mean, I feel like you want the answers, but I like that it was in so deep and the whole trial of it. And as you said, I think before we started recording was just like the pre-trial and those conversations and what a lawyer does. Like, I think it's a great documentary. I highly recommend it.
Absolutely. It was kind of making a murder before making a murder. Like this whole, it kind of kicked that whole thing off. I think if there wouldn't have been the staircase, I don't know that there would have been making a murder. So I find it super fascinating as well. Absolutely, hands down, one of my favorite cases.
I think Michael Peterson is the one who's just the obviously main character in the story. He'd been married once before, and he married an elementary school teacher in Germany. Her name was Patricia, but I'm not sure if they got married in Germany or like, because she's not German. She was American, right? They just lived in Germany. Anyway, I don't know.
Yeah, well, I was kind of confused on that too, but I thought that I had heard that they kind of like moved back and forth between Germany and the States for a little while. So
where do super pretentious people come from? Because that's where Patty came from. She was tough stuff for me, and the whole thing, I was staring daggers at her.
Oh my God, I know, it's crazy. Okay, so back to the story. Wherever she's from, that's not what we're focused on here today. They had two sons, Clayton and Todd.
He was a novelist and a New York Times bestselling author, famous for his work titled A Time for War, which he wrote after serving as a Marine.
He was honorably discharged in 1971. There needs to be an asterisk by that sentence because more on that later.
Yeah.
But I don't want to spoil the surprise. During this time, a close friend and widow named Elizabeth Ratcliffe died unexpectedly. So Elizabeth and her husband had lived next door to Michael and Patty. And like, I think they were all four of them friends, right? And then the husband died and Elizabeth was a widow for maybe 1 or 2 years. And then she died unexpectedly, naming Michael. Also, there's an asterisk by that thought and more on that to come later. But she named Michael in her will as the sole caretaker for her two daughters, Margaret and Martha, as well as the proprietor of her personal property. That sounds so official. So when Patricia and Michael divorced, the two sons went to live with Patricia, and Michael and the adopted daughters from Elizabeth Ratcliffe went to live with Michael in Durham, North Carolina, where later he married and met and then married Kathleen in proper order, ladies and gentlemen. That's how that happened. So then, cut to, they lived in, presumably, I mean, according to all sources, had like some happy life, and those kids are all beautiful and seem quite intelligent and well-spoken. And then in 1999, this is like a crazy side story here. Michael ran for mayor of Durham, North Carolina. During the campaign, he was caught in a lie that he had maintained for many years. He had always told the story that he had injured his leg by being hit with shrapnel when another soldier triggered a landmine when he was in Vietnam. And he claimed that he had received a Purple Heart for that incident, as well as a second Purple Heart and 2 other medals of honor. But you know, I mean, once you become a politician, like, stories like that tend to sort of reveal themselves. I mean, no one gets away with. I don't know what. How do you not watch the news? Like, how do you think you're going to get away with that? And even in 1999.
That many things too. It wasn't like, oh, I got a Purple Heart. It was like, here's the 4 things that happened to me, and yeah, I lost the paperwork. So.
If maybe he had told stories before and then he wants to run for mayor, which obviously is not smart, like, given that you have these lies in your background, but you have to stick to it. I mean, you can't like now come forward and say, you know, as it turns out, I didn't really have that. Yeah. You know, you just have to try to ride it out and be like, maybe they won't notice.
Yeah, exactly.
This is why you should never tell a lie.
That is. There you go.
Ladies and gentlemen, PSA number 1.
Yes.
There you go.
We're great at those on the show.
No, Allie has her first one. Good job.
Yeah, right? Okay. So anyway, as it turns out, he had no documentation to support any of that. In fact, we don't think that he was injured, you know, to do with the war at all. It was actually the result of a car accident in Japan. That's not funny, by the way. I mean, having a car accident's a real thing, and I'm very sorry for him. I'm just saying it turns out that it was, you know, an accident that could happen to anyone. In Japan, this man travels quite a bit after the war. And the fact that everyone found out about this cost him the race for mayor.
So on December 9th, 2001, Michael made a frantic 911 call in which he stated that his wife, Kathleen, had fallen down a set of stairs in their mansion. He stated that she was still breathing, but she was unconscious, and she appeared to have fallen down about 15 to 20 stairs.
I appreciate and understand how complicated the 911 call, like, operator's job is, and they have to keep you on the line. But don't you feel like sometimes they ask questions that you're like, it's an emergency and it's a trauma. Like, I can't even remember my name. You're lucky I remembered the numbers for 911 right now. Like, you're asking me how many stairs? Like, what? Like, I don't know. Let's
What's
just
a normal number?
At it. Like,
I'm with you. But I read something about this where the 911 operator, they're getting police there. They're getting the ambulance there at the same time. So they're just trying to get as much information and keep them on the phone. But it feels very not important in that moment. But you've seen stuff where later on they screw up in something they've said. And so it comes back to kind of bite him in the butt over the 911 call. Or I know on this one he said she had been breathing at first and stuff. And so that comes out later. So I get it. But you do kind of feel like, could you just
I guess it's good to have them talk. Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
it does seem.
Right. But his 911 call actually, to me, is very genuine sounding. It really does sound like he came onto this horrible scene with his wife and then dialed 911. And to me, the call sounded very genuine. Anybody listening can go look that up online. It's real easy to find.
We'll have it in our show notes.
Yeah, we'll link everything in the show notes. But and sometimes I don't feel that way about 911 calls. Sometimes I listen to them and I'm like, oh yeah, this person is definitely guilty of something. They just don't even sound, they don't sound like someone who's in the middle of an emergency. But that wasn't the case with this one, in my opinion. I don't know what you guys thought. Yeah,
it sounded genuine to me. Also that, like, I liked how, I know this isn't that you said they're supposed to keep you on, but like he hung up because he's like, I have to go deal with my wife. Like, I sort of, that felt very real to me. Like, here's what I know. Here's the information. I don't know, 15 stairs, like whatever he says. And then he's like, and then like, just hurry. And then he's done with you. Like,
right.
I don't know. That seemed very sincere to me.
Well, it's not like... Oh, yeah. Sorry. Whenever you have like, oh, it's 15 stairs, it's not like they're going to type a magic number in and like, oh, only 15 stairs? Then you just put one pillow under her head and she lives. If it's 20, we have no solution. So it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. I'm with you.
But yes, I agree with you that it felt sincere. Did you think so too, Melissa?
Yeah, absolutely. That was like a point for me for him, his innocence.
I can't wait to get to the end and talk about what everybody thinks about it.
I know.
So when paramedics arrived, they found Kathleen at the foot of the stairs, and she had no signs of life. And they kind of noticed that the amount of blood in the hallway and down the stairwell was a little bit more excessive than what you would expect to see with just an accidental fall down the stairs. So homicide,
to say the least.
So homicide detective Art Holland was called in to investigate. So things are getting serious when they call a homicide detective in to come check it out.
Yeah.
Instead of
they think it's a homicide.
So things are getting serious. So the scene itself was kind of confusing. The paramedics noticed that the blood didn't really look fresh, and it kind of had already started to dry and congeal by the time that they arrived. An area of the wall by the staircase appeared to have been cleaned or attempted to be cleaned with what they thought possibly could have been some kind of detergent. It just looked like somebody had wiped the wall down with some kind of wetness and smeared the blood everywhere.
That seems dumb. There was like who...
Well, it seems like someone tried to start doing it and then realized, like, this is too big of a job for my kitchen sponge, so maybe I should.
Yeah.
Is that something like that we can all agree that maybe a man would do? Because like any woman would know that, like, no, that's too big a job. I just got to commit to it, like whatever's going on. But a man might be like, I've never cleaned blood before. Maybe it's not that hard to like wipe up.
I love that. Yeah, you're exactly right. Well, my dad, when we were kids, he had like a grease fire in the kitchen. And when we got home, like it had exploded all around him, making like French fries or something. And you see this one wipe on the wall where he had decided to go for it. So that story really spoke to me. And he was like, nope, that's not going to work. I have to tell her the house caught on fire. That's my life.
So they also noticed that the bottoms of Kathleen's feet were covered in blood, which would be impossible if she had fallen down the stairs and was knocked unconscious and just, stayed in the position that she fell in. So they thought that was kind of suspicious, like that she may have at some point gotten up and walked through the blood and had some kind of a struggle during the scene, because that's the only way she would have blood on the bottom of her feet.
I'm here to say there's probably other ways, but go ahead.
Well, tell us.
I don't know. I think somebody much smarter than me should come up with that. But there has to be another way than like in a struggle. If she tried to get herself back up, what if she tried to get herself back up? There's a pool of blood and she tried to stand up and she couldn't do it. That's a theory you need to put in your tank and do something with it.
Okay, I'll take it. So the detectives also found 2 large blood drips on the back patio of the home, as well as blood smeared on the door that was coming in from that same patio area, kind of as if someone or maybe herself had touched something with blood on it, wiped it on the door or something like that.
I need to set the scene also that their home is beautiful.
So beautiful.
I mean, the style, the decor, it just was like, it's just so East Coast. Like, it's beautiful home. That pool area, the back, that the patio was beautiful. Which leads us to Michael's version of events for that night, which is that he told detectives he and Kathleen had a wonderful evening together, as they always did. Which is immediately suspicious when you're like, What do you mean? We every night, this is what we do. He said they had rented a movie, drank champagne, or wine, right? With one of the two, but both, obviously, and enjoyed each other's company inside the home before moving outside to sit by the pool while continuing to talk. Maybe that is something that the 3 of us get to look forward to when our kids are like grown. But can we honestly just have a side note of like, after the movie, you're like, oh yeah, let's step outside and talk. No way. I'm like, if I made it through the movie at all, I'm in bed asleep, like lights out. I just can't stay up until like 1 o'clock.
No, and you want to start a movie at 8 o'clock? That's when movies end. I'm done at 8 o'clock.
Right.
What kind of life is this? No. So many troubling things.
And by the way, I think the movie they saw was the Julia Roberts movie, American Sweethearts.
Yeah.
Which is a cute movie. I'm not wrong. But like, never mind. Maybe that's something for later on. We can discuss that movie selection when we reveal more of his character. He said that at about 1 a.m., 1 a.m., Kathleen said she needs to go upstairs to work. Like, what is this life? Anyway, and that he stayed at the pool for another 45 minutes. When he went inside, he found Kathleen at the bottom of the stairs and dialed 911. I will say the legitimacy for me to that aspect of the story was I think that they smoked. And if I had a nice house like that, I do not smoke. Not passing judgment here on people who do, but like I appreciate that they stepped outside. Okay, so then he comes in, he finds her at the bottom of the stairs, he dials 911. Kathleen's autopsy revealed more troubling clues to her death. She had 7 deep lacerations on her scalp that the medical examiner, Deborah Radish, believed were inconsistent with a fall. She also noted the presence of red neurons in Kathleen's brain tissue. Red neurons, by the way, as if I really know this, red neurons are shriveled up with little cytoplasm, which, thank you, Mandy, are jelly-like fluid that fills a cell. Whereas I just play a doctor on TV. I don't do that either. It's why I don't play a doctor, actually. You have like dialogue like that you have to say, play a doctor or a lawyer on TV, because you didn't really study the stuff. Like, you just get a script which has like words like that in it, and you have to really commit to like selling it. Like, yeah, give me 50 cc's of that, whatever, cytoplasm. And that's hard.
I think Tara Reid played a scientist one time, and I don't think that went over real well. But
see, that's why some people are better than others at this job. So there are red neurons that are shriveled up with little cytoplasm. As I explained earlier, the cytoplasm is a jelly-like fluid that fills a cell, whereas normal neurons are round with more cytoplasm. So what Deborah Radish is trying to tell us is that this would indicate that Kathleen had suffered a lack of oxygen at least 2 to 6 hours prior to her whole body death. So this brings up like huge questions about Michael's story.
Right.
Dr. Radish's professional opinion was that Kathleen was beaten, but survived long enough for the red neurons to develop by the time she died. With this information, Kathleen's death was officially ruled a homicide. A murder weapon was never found, but the lacerations on Kathleen's scalp indicated that the weapon used would have been narrow and rounded.
So when you heard of this whole story, did you have immediate opinions early on, and did they change as time went on?
So the initial, yes, I did, of course. Like, I have lots of opinions. Yeah. But mostly it was blood on the walls. Like, if you want to Google this crime scene, I highly recommend, because it is just baffling. The amount of blood in this, on the walls, on the floor, like on her body, you know, you just find yourself, it defies belief. Like, falling down the stairs just does not answer what happened, like where all that blood came from. So that to me was the biggest, like, just common sense tells you that can't possibly be the story.
Right.
I mean, at the time that I first saw it, I was sort of new to the true crime scene. And so when the doctor said, like, look, she was obviously, you know, being restricted blood or oxygen or whatever before she died, like, you just take that at face value. And then you come to learn that there's like other doctors, other scientists, and maybe she's super qualified, but there's other specialists who can give you the exact same set of facts and they come to a completely different conclusion. So this is what she came away with. But I also, you know, it does not escape my notice that she's in Durham, North Carolina. Like, how many murders has she, and maybe she's done tons of them. I don't, maybe there's the murder capital of America, but I don't know that she's seen as many. No, good, great. So, like, I just, but I will say that, like, there's no way you walk up on that scene and not think to yourself, like, there's something more to this story. There's no way she fell down the stairs.
Right.
Well, actually, that is what they thought. And Michael quickly became a suspect in this woman's death, which they were considering a murder at this point. Detectives that were working the case uncovered many inconsistencies in Michael's original tale of the events. While forensic investigators searched the home computer, they discovered that Kathleen had sent an email to a coworker at around midnight. So that meant clearly she was inside and at the computer at least an hour earlier than what Michael had said that she was. He said it was 1 a.m.
So let's just pause for a second and explain to people who are young, like you two, that in 1999, people did not have phones with email in their pocket.
Right.
So at that time, you had to be at an actual desktop computer. And you had to dial it up, right? Like, it was like, do.
I do remember that sound.
I mean, like, there was
you remember, like, some old person in your house doing it.
Some old person, my parents?
Well, they were older than you.
And like, it would take an hour for the website to come up, if there was even a website. Like, we're probably talking, like, AOL at this point, right? Like, you have mail.
Yeah.
And, I mean, this was a complicated thing.
So the next part of the story is like a big part of the story, I think, because
it's how they open the second episode.
On TV shows, we call this a bomb drop.
Yeah.
Like, big reveal.
Get ready for it. Here it comes.
Yeah.
So they found thousands of pornographic images and emails that Michael had been exchanging with a male escort, and he was actually arranging to meet this person for a sexual hookup of some kind. So, of course, that was kind of a shock to the detectives, especially because that's not what you expect to find whenever you're dealing with like a married, middle-aged couple. You know, you wouldn't expect to go on their home computer and find things like that. Of course, whatever y'all do in your own time, that's your business.
Yeah, we're not judging.
No.
We're just saying.
But it's just a part of the story that adds a little something to it. So
this is still the 90s. I mean, I'm just saying it's way long ago.
Yeah, for sure. So in these emails, Michael was upfront about the fact that he was married, and he even went so far as to say that he was happy and that his wife was great. It was just that he felt like he was bisexual and wanted to seek out those types of relationships also. Other emails revealed a different affair that Michael had previously had with a college lacrosse player. And detectives wondered whether it was possible that Kathleen had stumbled upon these emails and all these images sometime that night, and whether that could have been something that set off a confrontation that eventually led to this altercation that ended in her death. I mean, I think that's pretty plausible.
It's plausible. Just if your husband's having an affair with anyone, to immediately find that and just I don't think you care who it was. I would go crazy. So yeah, I would not be at the end of the stairs. My husband would be at the end
I
of the
believe
stairs.
you two have already talked enough about like if anything happened near you, you'd be suspected of murder from your Google searches alone. So
we're good.
Let's be safe in how we said. But right. Also, like, how would you feel then if you do stumble across these emails in which he references you, the wife,
right,
and how great you are?
Yeah.
Like, when you, like, I don't.
It's a conflict.
There's a lot that I would feel. A lot of feels in that.
Yeah. That's a lot to like unload and like have to think about.
Like you get halfway through and you're like, oh, he said I'm cute.
Right.
But now I'm mad again. So yeah, that's a roller coaster.
The next thing detectives looked into were the couple's finances.
Considering that they were both extremely successful in their careers and had that beautiful home and property that I mentioned earlier, Michael had made a lot of money on his best-selling novels. They were surprised to discover that the couple actually had a significant amount of credit card debt, nearly $143,000 to be exact.
Oof.
Wow.
That's a lot of credit card debt.
I mean,
I heard him speak later about this, though, and he kind of justified it as they had, I can't remember what vehicle, but it was a lease that they had taken out. So half of it was for the lease of this vehicle. And he said, you know, we're making $2 million or we're worth $2 million. And so that ratio is not that much. You know, if you think about it, to me, that's a lot of money. But to him, it wasn't out of the ordinary, I guess. He kind of tried to explain that away. Still a lot.
So I guess it's just a little question for me is like, is that credit card debt? They gouge you for like 20% interest, or was it like just debt that they were in to, a car dealership for a lease or something, and that would be like more reasonable. So
right.
Hey guys, as you know, I'm someone who loves knowing a little about everything. I love the news, I love entertainment, I love it all. But sometimes I don't have enough time to get all the information, all the little details and the minutia of everyday news because my goodness, it's constantly going. But thanks to the Newsworthy podcast, I can get all I need in little bite-sized pieces. So if the stress of the news is getting you down, but you still want to know what's going on in things like the election, check out the Newsworthy. And in these 10-minute episodes, they're just on the go listening. I can listen to it quickly on a walk, on my way bringing my kids to or from school or one of their activities. When I'm in line at the grocery store, there's never a wrong time to listen to the Newsworthy. But if you feel bogged down by the news and kind of the negativity of it, but you still want to be informed on what's going on, the Newsworthy is the place to do it. Erica at the Newsworthy is an independent journalist, and her team does really all the hard work and research for you. I love that the episodes are so well-rounded, and there will be fun stuff like tech or big stories, but the way Erica gives this, efficient and neutral overview of the news, and in just 10 minutes each weekday, it's perfect. Just search The Newsworthy in your podcast app or go to thenewsworthy.com to start listening. Again, search for the podcast The Newsworthy, 2 words, The Newsworthy, to make staying informed easier and more enjoyable every weekday.
As it turned out, Michael hadn't made any money in more than 2 years, but Kathleen was supporting the whole household, including putting 3 girls through college. Isn't that always the way? The woman always has to keep things together.
There you go.
On top of that, the stock that Kathleen once held in her company, Nortel, had dropped significantly, and what was once worth about $2.5 million was now dwindled down to about $50,000. Ouch.
Yeah.
That's a hard hit. Yeah.
Detectives then discovered that Kathleen had a hefty life insurance policy to the tune of almost $2 million. I have no words. I feel like I don't know where to go with that. Like, that's a lot of debt and a lot of money. And
yeah, and it speaks to motive. Boy. If he has killed her, then it speaks to motive when there are financial troubles. That comes up a lot when there's like an easy out, so to say, for a life insurance policy, which is why my husband, I will never have a high insurance policy. It's not a terrible idea.
Yeah.
I don't need you to run off and be happy with your new wife. Like, suffer a little bit. You're not going to make any money off of me.
Also, just as a point of record, like, it's not enough to have the life insurance say, like, if there's foul play, you don't get the money. Because, like, here we are falling down the stairs, and that doesn't cut it. So, I mean, it's a complicated matter, but I think you're just playing it safe.
Yeah.
I think just
That's all I needed
Be
from
smart.
you. Thank you, Allie.
You're welcome.
My life motto. So, blood spatter analyst Dwayne Deaver analyzed the clothing that Michael was wearing the night of the incident and found watermarks on the front of his shorts, as if he was trying to remove the blood before the paramedics arrived. He also noted that there was blood spatter between the legs of the shorts, which he said is commonly seen in beating cases where the assailant is standing over the victims. Quick note, remember the name Dwayne Deaver. He will come back. The forensic up in a big way. The forensic team set up recreation of the scene and simulated the attack, and the spatter was consistent with what was observed on Michael's shorts. There was also a bloody shoe print found on the back of Kathleen's pants that matched the pattern of Michael's shoe. Here's the thing with that. I don't think the shoe on the pants is that weird. That's a crazy crime scene, and you're just running around and trying to help. I can see how there's don't look at me like that, Mandy. But I can see how there's so much going on that you're just stepping on things and running around and going crazy.
And it's like the worst story would be like, oh, I think she was dead. Like, go grab her, hold her, like try to make it right, try to do something. Like I mean, I think the colder, more calculated thing that would be more suspicious in the story is if like, oh, I didn't touch her, I didn't go near. I mean, you know, I didn't want to.
I saw she was dead. You hear that sometimes where they're like, well, I knew she was dead. You're like, really?
Right.
So
What?
You don't want to hug her or do anything? Yeah, I totally agree with you there. So near the end of the investigation, detectives discovered a bombshell. Dun, dun, dun.
Another one.
I know. It's just bombshell after bombshell after bombshell. It was brought to their attention that Michael had been involved in an eerily similar situation 16 years prior, back when he lived in Germany with good old Patty. It seemed much too coincidental when detectives learned that Elizabeth Ratliff, the biological mother of Michael's adopted daughters, was also found dead at the bottom of a stairwell in her home, with many other striking similarities to the scene of Kathleen's death. Elizabeth's death was ruled an accident in Germany, and Michael had always told the girls that their mother had suffered a brain aneurysm and died. In a troubling twist, it turned out that Michael had been the last person to see Elizabeth alive. Officials made arrangements to have Elizabeth's body exhumed so that another autopsy could be performed in light of this shocking discovery.
Can we talk about this for a second?
Please.
I mean, honestly, like I don't even know where to begin.
Like, I want to
the
talk about
revelation. I need to like unpack my feelings here because if I were Caitlin. That's the daughter's name, right? It's the two girls.
Right, Martha and Margaret.
Sorry, my mistake. It's Martha and Margaret who now have to like deal with the fact that they are digging up their mother's grave.
Yeah.
To find out if the man who raised her and whom they call dad may have had something to do with their death, and it is and like. I mean, what are we expecting to find in that coffin? Like, oh my God, it's been a very long time. Like,
whenever I think of Martha and Margaret, that story is heartbreaking. So their dad dies, then their mom dies, and then the parents that they're living with, good old Patty and Michael, you know, they get divorced. They go and move to the States, and they find out, I think it was Margaret, who actually said, Kathleen was the first mom we really had. She took us in and brushed our hair. And so now they lose this mom and they're told their dad could have done it. That's a lot of things. And then now exhume your mom? No, thank you. That's too much.
It's just too much. It's really like overwhelming.
Absolutely.
And just as a side note, I do have to say that like, if that were all true, like how dumb do you have to be to pull the same trick twice?
Right.
Like, oh, it worked the first time in Germany. They'll never find out. Like, I'll just do the same thing again.
I don't think I wrote this in the thing anywhere, but if I'm wrong, we'll just edit this part out. But didn't they say that the sister of Elizabeth is who like tipped off authorities, like called them and said like,
I think you're right.
This was, this happened also with the same man, like, and it was kind of similar to the case you're dealing with now. So maybe you might want to check it out a little further.
And wasn't she also the one who's like, I thought that all along? And when she was on the stand, the defense attorney was like, well, so did you say anything to anyone? It's like, okay, so, but then the first time you really made this accusation was just like a month ago. And she's like, well, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
I saw that too. She's like, I knew I needed to say something. They're like, well, you had all this time. She's like, but now I am.
Right. Yeah.
That's super frustrating. Yeah. And then that's when we kind of go off to Germany and see Patty and her very robotic behavior. And she was so hard for me, Allie. I couldn't with her. So the same medical examiner that performed Kathleen's autopsy also performed the second autopsy of Elizabeth Ratliff. There was evidence that Elizabeth also had 7 lacerations on her skull, just like Kathleen. And I Googled this again before we started because I thought there's no way it's the same number. And Mandy was right. It was 7. So Dr. Radish determined that her death was also a homicide.
So one quick note about that death of Elizabeth Ratliff was that the German officials and the U.S. military police all kind of did their own little investigation and concluded that she died of a brain hemorrhage due to a blood coagulation disorder. She had apparently reported several severe headaches in the weeks leading up to her death, and so I guess that was just a readily available reason for what could have happened to her. And so that's what they went with. And so her death was not ruled a homicide. Just that's kind of an important thing, I think.
Yeah.
Part of this story. It's important to know that hers was not a homicide, or so they said. Although I still think it's weird.
Wait, did they decide that after Dr. Radish had her say and said she thinks it is a homicide, then the German officials? Or is this the original from the beginning?
From the beginning, yes. And then so when Dr. Radish had the body exhumed and checked out, then she changed the cause of death to homicide. So you guys can think what you will of that.
I do. I will.
Bring it. What do you think of that?
Well, okay, so here's what I'm saying. Like, I don't think that she gets to call it a homicide. Like, imagine, I mean, I don't know if they're embalming over there in Germany, but, like, I'm picturing a skeleton, right? Like, this is a dead body from a long time ago. And just because there were lacerations, like, that does not automatically mean homicide. Like, you don't, she's, in my obviously unprofessional opinion here, that sounds like a judgment she's making based on the current set of circumstances that Emmy is supposed to be doing, at least according to David Lee, the expert that the defense team brings up. Like, you're not supposed to be like kind of coming to conclusions like that. I think it's supposed to just be like, here's the actual scientific evidence of what I see in the body. There's no way that wasn't sitting in her mind when she performed this autopsy, like what she already knew from the other body. And so there you go. That's all I think.
Well, that's kind of why I thought they should have had that second autopsy done by somebody else, because I thought it was kind of
independent examiner.
Right. Like, it was too close of a connection. You know, she already had this information about the Kathleen's case, and then she is just going into it assuming already that it's going to be something having to do with Michael Peterson. So I do feel like that was it kind of opened up the door for a little bit of bias there. You know.
Michael went on trial for the murder on July 1st, 2003.
The prosecution and the defense painted conflicting pictures of what Michael and Kathleen's marriage was like.
The defense, of course, claimed that it couldn't be proven that the couple ever fought. And I thought this was a really compelling argument. Like, everyone who knew them, including the sister who thinks he did it, when she was first asked by the police, said they had a very loving marriage and that she never saw them, like, have any sort of real problems.
Right.
And that also includes their children, who said they thought the couple was very happy. And by the way, they lived together. They were married for a very long time. It's not like this came, it was a new relationship and then this happened. They had been together and their kids were grown and all this stuff, right? So that's compelling to me. The children all supported their father and insisted that he would have never done anything to hurt Kathleen. But then the prosecution asked the jury to consider how great of a marriage it could really be if Michael was, shopping the internet for casual affairs or hookups or whatever they were.
It was pre-Tinder.
Right, exactly. There was no swiping left here. Is it swipe left?
We don't know. We refuse to learn either.
I was trying to be cool, like swipe something, and then it was that was it. That was my one chance to be like hip, and I didn't.
Sorry.
I blew it. But one of the children one of the children sat on the other side of the court.
Caitlin. It was Kathleen's daughter. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the 4 children, just to clarify, Patty, your favorite, and Michael's, and the 2 girls that were Liz Elizabeth and her husbands from
Right.
before he passed away from Germany, and Caitlin from the get-go, do we know, or early on, like sat on the other side, on the prosecution side of the courtroom?
Caitlin was on board and actually was kind of the spokesperson at first for the whole family and saying they were supporting Michael. And then when all the information came out about the affairs, that's when she said, I don't know this man. You know, I don't know what was going
Right.
on. My mom wouldn't have stood for this. And then that's when she switched sides. That's tough.
That's compelling.
Yeah, for sure.
I know. And so tough for the kids to find out, like, on the heels of losing their mom, whether literally or figuratively, they lost this woman that was so important to them. And then to have their dad suspected of it, and then to find out that their marriage and their life was not what they thought. Like, it just, I can't imagine how hard this must have been for them.
Layers of it.
One of the strongest pieces of evidence from Michael's innocence was the 911 call, which was not the type of call, you know, I think the three of us as experts all agree. It seemed very sincere, and his horror and shock was genuine. The defense called on the prosecution to produce a murder weapon in the case, and the response came with the accusation that Michael had used a blowpoke. And in fact, it was like this big thing that the prosecution used throughout the trial was, you know, assuming it was this blowpoke, which, by the way, like, I don't know if maybe you guys are on the East Coast. No, you're in Florida, right?
Yeah,
you
we're
don't
in Florida.
have fireplaces either.
No.
Right, like,
Pointless.
I don't know from real fireplaces in general, never mind a blowpoke.
Yeah.
So the fact that this was, like, something that people kept saying, like, multiple times just blew my mind.
Yeah.
And what is I don't even know what a blowpoke is. It's like a long, you know, maybe the size of a golf club-ish type thing. And then when the sister, it turns out that this sister, Kathleen's sister, had given the family a blowpoke, which, like, dear sister, thanks so much for the blowpoke. Merry Christmas.
That's like a white elephant
It's like
gift.
it's like the best white elephant gift.
You gotta pass it to somebody else.
But I'm also like, she got up on the stand and really defended this gift, that it was so useful to her, and she really liked it when she got one, so she gave one to everyone in the family.
Everyone in the family. They hated Christmas with her.
This
You know
is
they
like
hated
something
it.
that my grandmother would do, and she would be so sweet about it too. Like, she would be like, "But I love mine, and so I know that you're all gonna love this." And, like, you know, it's just it's funny, it's sweet. I mean, everybody had a matching blowpoke.
It's ridiculous. It's a terrible gift, and nobody wants a blowpoke.
So the point is, the blowpoke had been given years earlier and was never found. In fact, it was not at the crime scene in the initial investigation, and the family said that the blowpoke was missing. And so the prosecution decided that
Because the blowpoke was
medical examiner Deborah Radish backed up the theory, saying that the lacerations were consistent with the blowpoke. What the defense attorney said was that, you know, they had to find a murder weapon that wasn't as hardy or as heavy as, say, like, what's the other thing that is at every fireplace? More like the iron, you know, like a really
Poke
heavy
thing,
instrument. That, like, that would have been too heavy, and it would have actually created, you know, a bigger injury. So it had to be something like light-ish, but still, you know, capable of inflicting a wound. So it was like a really narrow field of what this could have been, and the prosecutors thought it was a blowpoke. The prosecutors also laid out how they believed Kathleen's death occurred. They alleged that her murder took place hours before the 911 call was made. They believe that Kathleen went upstairs to check her email on her husband's computer because she had left her laptop at the office, and that while she was using Michael's computer, she discovered the emails that he had written to an escort that they were planning to meet up for sex.
After making the discovery, Kathleen went downstairs to confront Michael about it, and he picked up the blowpoke to beat her as she tried to go back upstairs.
It's not like every horror movie where, like, you're always yelling at the screen, don't go up the stairs.
Yeah.
For the next couple of hours, he attempted to stage the scene, placing sandals near Kathleen's body and attempting to clean up some of the blood. They alleged that Kathleen was not dead, and at some point, she must have stood up and tried to escape, but was attacked by Michael again.
Yeah, and that's like worst case scenario. I mean, that's a terrible, all of that's horrifying that he got so, you know, the idea that he would have gotten so upset and just decided to kill her. Like, what would she have said that, you know, would have prompted that, really? Like, that kind of rage so quickly instead of just a conversation.
Right. I mean, also that, like, what we do know is that any sort of cleaning up was failed, right? So
Right.
It had to really happen in that stairwell, and it's all, I just find myself like that's just so, like how so she's screamed from her computer, like, get up here. Wait till you hear what I read on your computer. And so he's like, oh, I know what that is. Yeah. He picks up the blowpoke ahead of time and then comes over, and then they're on the stairs in like a duel. And I mean, it just, I find it just, yeah. It's crazy.
And it's 1:00. Aren't they tired? Like, let's talk about it tomorrow. We've already watched a movie tonight. I'm done. Right. Let's reevaluate tomorrow.
So the whole prosecution's argument, or, you know, what they had said was the murder weapon, this blowpoke that we've been talking about, but they didn't actually have it. So I thought it was interesting that they landed on that as the murder weapon, actually after looking at pictures of the family's home, like, throughout the years, and this blowpoke is present. And then, you know, the sister had said, like, I've seen the blowpoke at all of their addresses in the last, like, you know, however long.
She needs to get over a blowpoke.
Right. And just saying that, you know, just saying that has to be it, because it's missing, and we've seen it in the picture, and that looks like something that it could have been. But they never actually were able to find it. So, and they had this whole thing about it's missing. By the way,
is she keeping track of all the gifts that she gave them like that?
Yeah.
Where's the, like, you know, pillow that I gave? I mean, like, you better have everything she ever gave you in that house, like, front and center.
She sounds like a good time. Her and Patty would have been buds.
Yeah.
They sat together at the trial. Okay.
So the defense actually was able to recover this missing blowpoke, and they presented it as evidence in the trial. So they said they had found it during a search of the Peterson estate in a corner of the garage, and it was covered in dust and cobwebs, and it really looked like it had been there for a long time. And so therefore couldn't have been used as a murder weapon, because it wouldn't have cobwebs and stuff all over it if it had been used that recently.
I liked this part of the documentary, that strategy conversation, because according to the documentary, now, like, I don't, you know, what do we know? It was just the way the cameras told the story, but that they found it the night before. They found this blowpoke the night before they the defense rested their case, like at the end of the trial.
Right.
And that, in fact, like, there was tremendous debate as to whether, like, how to present this, because they were sort of like suspicious that we're bringing this out at the last second. And then the defense lawyer, whom I quite liked, he seemed super amazing. But he was saying, like, but if we'd found it at the beginning, like, we wouldn't feel this way. It's really only that we just found it the night before that's just too, like, you know, like one of Michael's novels, or, you know, a soap opera, if you will, that they found it at the last minute. And I just thought that was a really interesting part of, like, the law, or, like, presenting this case to a jury that you know, you have so much to worry about. You would think that, like, finding it would be this huge heroic, like, oh my God, thank God moment. Like, oh my, the judge is going to call it, like, cancel the trial. Like, it's over, you know? But really it doesn't work that way, that it's all about presentation and how it comes across, and how the prosecution can sort of, you know, come at it with a completely opposite, you know, way it seems. And it's up to the jury to decide. And obviously, you know, the defense attorney was really worried about that, and with obviously rightly so. I mean, it was just crazy. And then I sort of wondered to myself, like, haven't you had 3 years to look through the house? Like, why are you looking out? Like, what have you been doing all this time? Like, I would have looked, and I'm the finder in my family. Like, a little thing is that, like, I always say to my kids, like, do you really want me to? Because, you know, I'm going to be annoyed that, like, I had to get up. Right, of course. Who wants to get up? And so anyway, I just wonder, like, had they been searching the whole house every weekend for 2 years, and then finally they found it? Or did he finally just sort of get up and say, like, you know what, I'm just going to look one more time? And
right.
I don't know. Anyway,
well, that was one thing that
was a crazy.
Yeah. And the investigators had said that, like, they're like, we searched the house like thoroughly, and it was not there. Like, we didn't find it. So that does make you wonder too, like, where did this blowpoke actually come from?
But I did hear Michael Peterson talk later and say when they came to search the house, nobody was looking for a blowpoke. They didn't know what they were looking for. They were just looking for evidence. And you're not thinking this blowpoke is part of it. And then that comes up in trial, and then they're looking for a blowpoke. The family is. So I can buy a lot of stuff in this story.
Okay.
Oh, I know you can.
I got you.
So the blowpoke that was shown to the jury didn't have it wasn't mangled or bent, and it didn't really look like it had been used in a crime. So that's just an interesting little tidbit. So after a long and grueling trial, a jury found Michael Peterson guilty of the murder of Kathleen, and he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He was taken to the Nash Correctional Institution, where he and his defense team worked on an appeal. He was appointed an attorney after running out of money to pay for the one that he had, which that's got to be so tough after you've been working with this lawyer this whole time and they know your whole case and everything, and then to not be able to afford to continue.
Well, it's got to be tough to pay all that money to an attorney who got you sent to prison for the rest of your life. Like, I mean, I feel like is there a refund?
Yeah.
Kick some of it back into your commissary or something.
Not the outcome I paid for.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. I mean, also, this is another just part of the law that was really interesting to me in the documentary, was just like that the brother said to him, you know, they'll take you. He's like, I'm really sure they're going to find you not guilty. But if they don't, like, just, you know, it's crazy. But if they don't, it's okay. It's not over. You know, and he had this whole sort of like, you know, brotherly, lovely, like supportive thing to say, just in case that's the outcome. And I don't know, I really liked his brother in that moment. Like, it was such a cool guy thing of like, look, I know it's not going to happen, but if it does, I just need to say it. And I just really liked him in that moment.
Yeah, I like the brother a lot.
So in April of 2006, his appeal was heard before the court, and it was alleging that he was denied a fair trial due to numerous judicial mistakes, including that the information involving Elizabeth Ratliff's death should have never been heard by the jury, which I struggle with because I think it was extremely relevant and definitely should have been heard by the jury. To me, that doesn't seem like a reason that he should have gotten a new trial.
What did you think, Allie? Did you think they were wrong on that, or?
No, I mean, I think you can't not talk about it. That's like, it's such a huge part of, you know, especially because, I don't know, I sort of recently in a case I was listening to talked about how like circumstantial evidence is actually still real evidence. Right. People always say, oh, that's just circumstantial. Well, that's not. You know, that's still evidence that the jury needs to consider. And this to me was an important part of the story for the jury to take in. And I think, you know, there were some mistakes in the trial that I thought, you know, did sort of raise flags for me, but this was not one of them.
Right. Agreed.
So the appeal was denied after the judge determined that even though there were errors, and one of them was in a search warrant, that they really did not have any negative effect on the defense's original case. So that ruling was not unanimous, which meant that under North Carolina law, he would be able to appeal it to the Supreme Court, which he did on September 10th, 2007. The court announced that it agreed with the Court of Appeals and would not accept the request for an appeal. So at this point, he has used up all of his options for appeals.
And now the story's over. Oh, the end. Oh, but wait.
Yeah.
What is that called in a TV show? Is that another?
Right. It's a red herring,
Ooh,
right?
Okay.
It's like it's a
That's what Josh
false
Mankiewicz.
ending.
Yeah, red herring.
Sometimes, like, if this were a novel or a TV show, you'd say like, oh, there's too many endings in the story. Like, just wrap it up. You know, like, you can't just keep dragging the audience out like this.
Yeah.
Yes, you can.
But wait, there's more.
There is more.
Yeah, this is like the sequel.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, there is more. So in November 2008, Michael's new attorney filed a motion for a new trial, alleging that the prosecution failed to present evidence about a tire iron and that they used an expert witness, good old Duane Deaver, and he had exaggerated his qualifications and had been discovered to have mishandled evidence and had shady methods of testing his theories. And that motion was actually denied in March of 2009. But Duane Deaver was still...
He's coming up.
Are we coming up more to talk
he's gonna
about
have
him?
his
Oh
day.
my
Yeah,
goodness,
he
yes.
is.
There's so much about him. That guy.
Well, and the interesting thing was with him is he actually worked at a lab. He wasn't, you know, one of the lead investigators or anything. So you kind of come to think like, well, he's going to be impartial. There's, you know, what...
Right, he's an expert witness.
Right.
Yeah.
That's kind of what goes, you know, expert witness...
You expect,
Duane.
yeah.
Duane Deaver, and he really failed.
Duane
us.
Deaver.
Yeah.
Under the dictionary definition of Something is Dwayne Deaver.
There you go. And it's not a good word, so.
And it's not right. It's not a word we say on this podcast.
There you go.
Michael and his supporters were not willing to give up on the hope of exonerating him. So there is more to the story. Bill Peterson, Michael's brother, whom I just got through saying I liked, and he happens to be a lawyer as well. He came up with the most, oh no, this is not the long shot idea. This is the long shot idea.
It is.
Oh my God.
It is. The best theory ever.
Like, I feel like there's like an emoji for this theory of just like your mind blown. Like you thought it had happened already, but like, just wait. This story is mind blowing. Okay. So he combed through all the boxes of evidence and he was searching for something else that you can appeal on. You can't just like keep coming to the court. Like you have to like come up with something new, right?
Right.
So he, I love that. I don't really know that. I just know that from like TV and, Dateline. So, but I sold it like with commitment.
We nodded our heads and agreed 100%. So you're good.
Right. Okay, good. Right. So there you go. So anyway, okay. So he talked to neighbors, he talked to another attorney, and this is what they came up with. The neighbors suggested that perhaps Kathleen had been attacked by an owl.
Yes.
This is for real. I'm not making this up. It was an owl. And he had read some like case file that had mentioned that there was a specific type of feather that had been found at Kathleen's, crime scene. A man by the name of Tim Thompson, owner of Associated Microscopes. Sure. Well, that's useful. He examined the feather and he determined that it was a type of small particle feather that grew under the claws of an owl.
I didn't even know this was a thing.
No, right. Who would guess that?
Yeah.
And he found out that when owls attack, they leave behind these small feathers. I would think they'd leave behind like big feathers too. I mean, I've seen bird feathers maybe they're just so strong, those owls.
Yeah.
They only leave by the little feathers. So after examining a clump of hair that had been pulled from the roots and was found clutched in Kathleen's hand, it was determined that there were 2 of these microscopic feathers tangled within it.
I can't.
I mean,
that's huge.
That's huge. That is big. That is big.
Yeah, Mandy.
Yeah,
it is huge.
It is. I don't know. I don't know.
We'll get into it, but
I mean, it's just crazy because how else could that possibly happen?
Right.
Like, I mean, I know it's crazy to talk about an owl attack. It's crazy. I know that. But at the same time, like, if that's not what happened, what are owl feathers doing in her hand?
And why did she have her own clump of hair? Because you wouldn't pull out your own.
Swatting off an owl.
That's what I'm saying. But I'm saying, like, if you were being attacked by like your husband, you wouldn't pull your hair out. I mean, that wouldn't even make logical sense. But I can see if you had an owl, like, I mean, you should see the way I flail around if there's just like a little bee or something.
A bug.
I mean,
yeah. Oh my God. Or even just the suggestion that there might be some sort of insect on me sends me into like, a tizzy, a full on Tasmanian devil, like, oh my God, get it off me. And it's nothing. I mean, I can't imagine, but like, I know how crazy it sounds, and yet you find yourself nodding your head like, yeah, I mean, maybe.
Okay, I'm on board.
Not the police, however.
Yeah.
The police were not on board, Melissa. The police found this theory laughable, and I can only imagine that they actually, laughed out loud at this.
Right.
But there are other experts out there who believe that this theory holds weight and that Kathleen's injuries are absolutely consistent with being attacked by an owl. They asserted the possibility that Kathleen could have been walking inside when an owl swooped down, landed on her head, and caused the laceration. So that explains that too, because these owls are, they're predators, right? Like they have these talons, and they're certainly not something you'd want to tangle with. And it would explain how there was blood outside the house as well as on the door frame. And like, what if she had, sort of grabbed her head and run inside and she freaks out inside, loses her balance, trips on the stairs. Because let's remember, like, she may not have been, I don't know what her blood alcohol level was in her blood, but she'd been drinking and it's 1:00 in the morning and she had some sort of like some narcotic or something in your system, and then she gets attacked by an owl, you would be panicked and you would like kind of not handle it well, and you would run inside and run upstairs and you're bleeding, and you could trip and fall down the stairs. And oh my God, can you imagine if that was the theory? If that really happened, and the owl theory fell on deaf ears in court, and Michael was refused a new trial based on this theory, which of course is not surprising, but still, I don't know that I discount this theory.
I know. Didn't you sort of feel like everyone in this trial could have been on an updated version of Clue? Like you have, she's dead on the staircase with an owl as the weapon, and Michael's over there with his like pipes smoking.
Like,
he's always got a pipe.
Professor.
Yeah, I'm telling you, got to update this game.
So my biggest problem, because Melissa is on board with the owl theory. I
say
am
you should
not.
think of it.
I'm not really quite there. I think there's some things I would need explained though to get that idea out of my head. But wouldn't you be screaming at the top of your lungs if this like owl is attacking you? So how come
That's
no
a
one?
big property though. I mean,
I don't have a mansion, so I don't know how far away you'd have to be before you don't hear someone screaming that's getting attacked by an owl.
at one point in the episode,
But they did do a test.
They did.
Yeah.
Of them, somebody screaming, help, 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 and you couldn't hear it outside. So your idea is invalid, and now you agree with the owl.
Yeah, you're wrong.
Right? You're wrong? Yeah. You're wrong. Allie and I agree. 2-1. It's done.
But the connection between the first lady that he knew who died at the foot of her stairs, so that's really, is that just a really crazy coincidence that he knew two women who had died in a similar fashion?
Here's the thing. To me, that, and maybe I'm just naive, but like that even more is convincing to me that he didn't do it, because if you did kill if you had someone who died at the foot of the stairs, like, and you're the last person who saw them alive, even if it was deemed an accident, like there's no way you would think anyone with, especially a writer who like is intelligent, does write these stories, he would think to himself, like, whatever happens, she can't die near the stairs, because like that would be bad for me later,
Why is this guy not looking into one-story homes? I have a big question.
Right.
Like his realtor should have been like, no, bud, you can't do this. This is not a good idea. So.
Right. You need to go for the desert house, like, the Brady Bunch house. Oh, no, that was two-story too. No, never mind.
Yeah, see?
But like, you need to go for
what's
called a ranch house.
Yeah, a ranch house would have been fine. Nobody would have been dead if there was a ranch house.
Well, something else that was, I guess, that speaks to you guys' owl theory.
Please don't be sarcastic with Allie Sweeney.
Yeah, why are you saying it like that?
Don't be so flippant to our guests.
I'm just okay, stop this. Okay. But they said that they had like a diagram drawn of her autopsy, and so they did say that like the injuries on the back of her head, the way they were even drawn on the picture, it kind of looked like three talons. With like
we agree.
A claw. Yeah.
It looked like that.
Yeah, your talons. I see your talons now, Mandy. That's amazing.
Yeah. That's why it's a good thing.
I wish everyone at home listening right now could see how Mandy just like embodied an owl for a second, and we were like, "Oh my God, look, an owl!"
Now we're all
attacking.
Believers.
That's exactly what happened.
What kind of acting is that? Like when you become the character that you're.
Right, method.
There you go. She's a method actor now. Congratulations. I want to see nothing you're in.
I'm great at this. I know.
It's been a while since I've had a baby of my own, and some days I miss it so much. The baby cuddles and baby smiles, but when it comes to diaper rashes, not so much. I remember the first time my oldest had a diaper rash, I was really devastated. Here's this tiny thing totally dependent on me, and now she's fussy and obviously uncomfortable, and I'm supposed to have the answers. Well, with time and treatment, it went away, but what I really wanted was to avoid it altogether. And now, baby butts rejoice. New Huggies Skin Essentials are here, a brand new dermatologist-approved line of diapers, wipes, and pull-ups training pants, all designed with baby's sensitive skin in mind.
The wipes are thick and have zero harsh ingredients for a great, gentle clean. Pull-Up Skin Essentials has got your big kid covered too, with a training pant that's ultra soft and breathable to help protect sensitive skin throughout potty training. Whether you're a first-time parent or a seasoned pro, make it easy on yourself and your baby with Huggies. Learn more at Huggies.com. Once again, head to Huggies.com to learn more.
So I really looked into this owl thing, just so you know, like I read a little more about the owl theory, and I think you're going to post the link on your notes, right? But that they did say that like owls are really protective that time of year. I can't believe I'm defending this right now, but go with me. But that like other people have had claims of like owls, you know, some lady said like this owl chased her home and like was pissed at her for getting too near his turf. Now, like this is their backyard, and so I imagine they're there all the time. So why is this owl like kind of coming up now? I don't know, but they were saying that time of year is more prevalent for like that kind of aggression from an owl. So there really was like owl people saying that this is legitimate. It, you know, take it for what it's worth.
Frankly, we need an owl awareness month. We need none of this. That's what the world needs now. Oh, gosh.
Also, by the way, owls are huge.
Huge.
They are.
Like, I had not realized that. I mean, you see them up on a lamppost or like a tree really far away, and you don't really realize.
Well, I've heard people describe that as it being like a bat, like hitting you in the back of the head. So I'm sorry, Mandy, you're wrong.
That's horrifying.
Go ahead.
I don't know. You might turn me to like your side. I don't know. In January 2011, Duane Deaver was fired when an independent audit of the agency he worked for found that he had inaccurately represented the evidence in at least 34 cases, including one case which a man was falsely accused and convicted of murder.
Say it again. 34.
34 cases. And Melissa knows a little more detail about this, but there was one guy who had spoken out, and I guess his conviction was overturned after this Deaver character had kind of done a little bit of fudging of the evidence in this case.
So Greg Taylor was convicted of murder, had a life sentence, and he basically drove off to the woods, did drugs with a friend. His car got caught. They left, came back, found a body, called 911, and that was it for him. He said it all went downhill after that. And Deaver basically said that there was blood found on the side of his car. Well, it was never even blood. Like, nothing was really tested. He had like a history of not showing the positive results versus the negative. And so by omitting that, like I tell my kids, if you're omitting the truth, you're lying. So that's what he did. And that guy was exonerated after 17 years.
Also, so they brought on, and by the way, the lawyer, the defense attorney, he brought this up the first time, like in the main trial, and talked about Deaver's like really sketchy methods that he conducted for like trying to replicate how the blood ended up in certain places, right? So when the team brought on David Lee to be their expert witness, right? And he's this world famous pathologist, like amazing man who I wish I knew because he just seems so cool.
Right.
And certainly if you follow true crime, you've heard him mentioned in lots of other important cases that he's been brought in to like, you know, talk about. And what he said was that like, that's not how you conduct an experiment. Like that's not even the right approach.
Right.
You're supposed to go through the story of what the prosecutor, or, you know, however it's going, like how you think it happened and how people would naturally behave in a certain way, and what are the results of that.
Right.
And it seems like Deaver was working the exact opposite way. He was like, what kind of motion can I swing this blowpoke with to make sure that the blood spatters in that way and in the way I want, and like get inside my shorts, for example. And like they're like literally high-fiving each other, dancing, his leg all like up, you know how like in a creepy way guys stand in shorts.
Yeah.
Like he was on the stairs in this like completely contorted position, and like finally got the blood where it was, and they're like celebrating. And that's not how this, as I now know, how this is supposed to go. So he was, and the frustrating thing, if you're the defense attorney, is like, I said this then, like,
right.
Why did it take you, you know, all these years to discover what I knew all along, which is that this guy is a quack.
So the interesting thing in that appeal is when they're actually showing, or the request for a new trial rather, when they're showing clips of the assistant district attorney saying, if Duane Deavers is a liar, then, you know, the only way this could be wrong is if Duane Deavers is a liar. And then come to find out, Duane Deavers is a liar. So, you know, there goes half their case right there. And a lot of jurors came back and said, yeah, a lot of, you know, the reason I found him guilty was because of the blood evidence that Duane Deavers testified on.
Right. And didn't you think it was interesting? So, yes, because of this new information about Dwayne Deaver, like he got heard again, another appeal or whatever in front of the judge. And it was the same judge.
I love that.
Who I know. And I feel like he sat there listening to this, like, and they had all the footage, not from like, you know, some crappy court camera. It was like clearly the documentary raw footage of the trial.
Right.
And so the defense attorney is just playing back for them, you know, question after question of what they all said then and how they looked and that makeup and hair. I feel like we glossed over that. But right, like he just the like 2000s were not pretty for anyone.
But no,
is all I'll say there.
The assistant district attorney, Frida, she actually in the 90s, she looked pretty rough. Like she looked like she was in the 80s, but somehow in the 2000s, she went back another decade. Like she was multiple decades behind in terms of style and face.
The 70s like did come back again, but like not yet. So she was like way ahead of that curve. And it must have taken a lot of time in the morning. I'm thinking, like, she's got this crazy job. And, like, I wonder that about a lot of people. Like, there's somebody who does my hair and makeup. That is not my job. But I wonder about women who have these, like, really important and busy jobs. And they spend all this time doing, like, serious makeup themselves before they start their day, or hair or whatever, both. And I think to myself, like, that's intense. Like, I can't imagine dedicating that kind of time to that.
She did not pay anyone for that. I am 100% sure.
Right. So he, like, so he brought back all this from the main trial and played it for the judge and was, I mean, how he did not say, I told you so, I do not know.
I know.
But luckily, he held his tongue and was very respectful to the judge. Like, you were misled. On December 16th, Michael was released from jail on bond and placed under house arrest after a judge ordered a new trial. Incredibly misleading and liar information and false testimony about the bloodstain evidence in the case. Not to mention that, like, the ridiculous back and forth of, like, I went to 200 cases, or he had something about hundreds of he'd weighed in on, given an opinion on, and then, like, all these crime scenes he'd been to, and all these that involved a fall crime scene he's been to. And then the investigator was like, well, look, I read through hundreds of thousands of pages of case filings, and never once was the word fall used in any of them.
Never.
So, like, everything he said was a lie. And when you cut back to him and how he said it in the witness stand, like, just his smug face really pissed me off.
I'm with you. That's your professional opinion.
Yep.
Michael's new trial was set to begin on May 8th, 2017, but a few months prior, in February, news broke that Michael's lawyers had negotiated a resolution with the Durham County DA.
And on February 24th, 2017, Michael entered an Alford plea to the voluntary manslaughter of Kathleen. He was sentenced to maximum 86 months in prison with time served, which meant he did not have to serve additional jail time. Let me tell you, the documentary was originally like to do with the first trial in 2003? Right. And then there's 2 additional like postscript episodes, and the shocking aging process that happened to Michael Peterson, whether you're on his side or not. I mean, the cold hard truth is that like 8 years in prison, as it turns out, is not like 8 years in regular life, because this man looked 1,000 years old.
He did
in that documentary, and you're like, oh, I mean, it's shocking. It was shocking to see him even cleaned up and in the court and like in a suit. You find like he was so gone and so aged, like his eyes were sunken. I just felt like that is just, it was so, and if, you know, there's any chance in your mind, whether it's owl or not, like that you believe there's innocence there, like it just breaks your heart to think that like what he's been through as an innocent person.
Absolutely. So we've kind of laid out the case. I want to ask theories. What do you think actually happened to Kathleen, Allie? Are you on board fully with Al?
I mean, fully is hard for me because, you know, even like, though I hate to agree with Mandy, I think she's right. Like, I have questions.
I hate to agree with her too.
I know. But I do sort of feel like they watched a movie and and were out drinking. Like, there's no way he was sober, you know?
Right.
So I wonder if, like, a lot of me feels like maybe they fell asleep. So, but I also then, you know, have to really come back to the, like, did she know? His story, which we didn't cover here, was that she knew, that Kathleen knew that
Right.
he was bisexual and that she was okay with it. I feel like if they could have proven that, they would have, and they couldn't, or they didn't, you know? And so, I mean, is there a possibility that, like, there was some big revelation at night? Is that really how that would have ended? Like, in that kind of a bloody thing, as you said, like, fight about it tomorrow, or like, why does that lead to her murder?
Right.
So then I'm left with the owl theory, and as crazy as it sounds, it does not seem so crazy to me as him murdering her down a set of stairs, like, after having done it 17 years earlier. Like, that just it seems even more preposterous to me than an owl.
Yeah. Mandy?
Well, you know, I'm not fully on board with the owl theory. I mean, I do think...
You're the conspiracy theorist. This makes no sense.
I know. It is hard to explain, though, the things like the feathers that were found, like, in her hair. And like I said, I do think that having a clump of her own hair in her hand in itself is kind of... doesn't really speak to,
weird.
like... being beaten, because you wouldn't pull your own hair out if you were being beaten. So that's definitely something interesting. But like you said about whether she just made this discovery like that night about her husband's affairs and everything, I feel like that's a lot of like assumptions, because there's really nothing to suggest that she stumbled on that, you know? And so I don't know. I mean, I feel bad for Michael in that way, because like that is a seriously personal thing that like got busted wide open for everybody because of this case, because of what happened. And it may or may not even have anything to do with it. So, you know, I feel bad. I mean, I could probably be convinced of the owl theory.
It wouldn't take much on you.
It wouldn't take much.
But here's another thing I'll say that we didn't mention, but and I don't know like the clinical terms to explain it, but there were, you know, she did have those lacerations, but there was no blunt force trauma.
Right.
So when we talk about like, you know, a beating, the reason they picked a blowpoke is because it wasn't that hardy an instrument that like a bat that would have actually caused, you know, real skull damage. That's an interesting thing too, because the way that Deaver like managed to get the spatter to look like it did, if you were to beat someone, if anyone was to like, you know, really choose to go that way, are you really going to only like half hit the person that you're trying to beat to death? Like it just, that part, they can't, whatever happened, it wasn't that to me, like whether you necessarily believe like in actual innocence, like I don't see how you could sit on a jury and convict him, like is the end of that story, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, no, I agree that the evidence is like really wonky there, because you can't really say for sure that anything really in particular happened. But
what I hate is he deserved a new trial for sure, but by taking the Alford plea, he's saying, yeah, I'm saying I'm guilty of this crime, but I can still plead my innocence. But he can never sue the state for, you know, unlawful imprisonment.
Right.
He's a felon for the rest of his life. Her sister can say, you murdered my sister and you admitted to murdering my sister.
Right.
There's a lot of factors that went in with it. But he said making that decision to take the Alford plea, he made it because of his son, who said, Dad, people that think you're innocent are always going to think you're innocent. People that think you're guilty are always going to think you're guilty. Like, you've got to move on with your life. So I don't know if I'm 100% Al theory, but I'm 100% he deserved a new trial, and I think he got really screwed in the first one. So that's where I'm at, yeah.
And that Alford plea business is, like, tricky, right? There's some other cases where that, like, might come up soon, like the Adnan Syed case, and I sit there thinking to myself, like, I don't know, because I'm definitely someone who's like, yeah, like, I didn't do it in my life. Like, you know, getting the people who put me in jail, like, you can see where that, like, you would want to sort of, like, clear your name.
Right.
I mean, and get, like, make the people who said you did do it, like, admit that they're wrong.
Right.
And yet, like, oh my God, how long can you financially, like, handle that? How long can you just keep sitting in a courtroom all day? Like, listening to people talk to you like that, like I mean, I can sympathize with them doing that, because all of it sounds horrible to me.
If you have a quick minute, we'll do the last thing before we go. We're just going to do rapid fire questions for you, if you're good with that. Just First thing that comes off the top of your head. These are incredibly important. There are right and wrong answers. So no big deal. Okay, ready. Allie Sweeney, what's your favorite snack?
Popcorn.
Favorite junk food?
Love it.
Would you consider that junk food?
No. Popcorn is so good for you. My favorite junk food would be tougher, like just because of the time of year. I'm going to go with Girl Scout cookies.
Yeah.
Perfect. The kids show you hate the most?
That show Caillou.
Yes.
He is the spawn of Satan, and
I cannot tell you how many nasty thoughts I have about that character. And though that I was forced to watch it for a period of time, and I would come up with like the storylines that were happening amongst the adults off camera. Like I would just like, cause it would be like him, Caillou, talking to some other little kid, and you would only see like the skirt of the mom and like the neighbor or dad that they're talking to. And in my head, there's like this whole affair that's happening. And like, I would concoct all these like the soap opera that's going on amongst the adults around poor Caillou. And like, that's why he's still bald, like 37 years later.
You are awesome. So is there are you a morning person or a night owl? See what I did there?
No. No pun intended.
All pun.
I am a morning person, though I don't know if that's natural or from being an actress, which requires you to wake up very early in the morning. At Days of Our Lives, I often had a 6 a.m. call time. So from a very young age, I was sort of sent into a life of waking up early in the morning and then being exhausted by nighttime.
Perfect.
My kids give me a 6 a.m. call time
There
every
you go.
morning.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. And then, the worst is the middle of the night. Wait, do your kids do this thing where they like have a nightmare or whatever and they come into the room and they just look at you
Standing
until
over
you
you.
wake up?
Yeah.
That is what like the nightmares are made of. I find myself just like, that is the worst way to wake up.
It is. And they're so calm and then just telling you about
Well,
it.
actually, I remember doing that to my parents. And like, I even can remember like being about 5 or 6 and just going into my parents' room. And like, the reason that I wouldn't just announce myself or say anything is because I was like scared to wake them up. So I would just like stand there staring until one of them woke up. And of course, every time like, my mom would wake up and she would like jump out of her skin, and be like, what are you doing? Like, yeah, like, what are you doing in here? And, and then, so of course I would always be caught by surprise by that response. And like, I mean, nobody likes to be woken up in the middle of the night, but when you're a kid, like, you don't know what to expect.
Yeah.
I don't know. So maybe that's why they do it. But yeah, my kids have totally done that too. And I always have the same response. I'm like, oh my God, like, what are you doing in my room? Like, go back to bed.
They don't seem surprised or upset by the fact that you are now in a cold sweat.
Is Dean Cain your all-time favorite co-star? And there is a correct answer to this, and it has to be yes, because 12-year-old me will be crushed if it's not him. I adore him.
No, it was impossible not to transport it back to Lois and Clark.
Right.
When I was sitting next to him, I was like, oh my God, you're amazing. Yeah, like now he gets to win the co-star awards ceremony. He is, and just as like polite and lovely and professional as you could ever hope to be. And then he has rescue dogs, which like, up through the roof in terms of.
And his son, he's been a single dad with his son, and he has such a good relationship. I stalk him on Instagram sometimes, but he has such a good relationship. It's not a full-time job here. I've got other people to stalk, so can't do that.
Right.
And then our last question is, what is your favorite true crime podcast hosted by two moms who have no idea why Allie Sweeney wanted to come on their show? There's only one answer.
Moms and Murder. Hello. The fact that my favorite part of your story, by the way, is that you needed to adjust your logo to add the word podcast because otherwise people might be confused for like moms who murder or moms. I mean, I don't know where else this was going, but like, thank God you put the word podcast in that logo.
We thought like it could have turned into like a cult where people just go around all day asking you if you've had a bowel movement yet. And that's about all that can happen.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
That's us.
It's amazing. And by the way, this has been as amazing as I thought it would be. You guys are super fun.
Oh, good.
And I
I love like listening to your podcast, and I love being on your podcast. So there we go. I hope that people like listening to it, because it would be really disappointing for me. They're like, how come you let that soap actress on your show? Like, please don't let that happen.
People
again.
are going
No
crazy.
way.
Don't
No
do it.
way.
And if it does happen, don't.
No, we're not going to.
It's gonna be your fans that are gonna be like, what is she doing? Why did she do that?
No, I'm like such a super fan. But like, I really listen. I don't know what other podcasts you guys listen to, but it like is so much more satisfying. Other than the part where like when I'm running, I'm afraid I'm being chased.
Of course.
Like listening to this podcast, and at night I feel that it's a little detrimental to my like mental health.
Sure.
But in general, I feel informed. I feel so much more like on top of how they could come at me and what I should do about it.
Right.
And what not to Google.
Yeah.
That it's really, those are the key things I've learned.
We're keeping you alive and out of jail.
Yeah.
That's it.
So you mentioned already True Crime Garage. What other true crime podcasts do you listen to?
So my true crime journey, as most people, started with Serial, right? And it was like one Christmas, and I just remember like in my slippers in the kitchen making dinner, and I think that I never made dinner. Like I think I listened to the entire show from start to finish, all the episodes, and never spoke to anyone or did anything like for the 8 hours it took. And so that was like the beginning of the end for me. And then I don't know if you know, but my husband is a police officer.
Yes.
So
we're not stalking you. We just happen to see that.
No, right. I mean, that's out there. But he gets super, I shouldn't say annoyed, because he's not annoyed. He's just like, this is my job and I don't want to talk about it at home. But I have like all sorts of questions for him. I'm like, how could they do that? And why do they say that? And of course, because he's my husband and he's an amazing investigator. He is not like those people you hear about.
Right.
He's like, I don't know why they do that. That's not what I do. You know, like I can't, you know, I don't represent like that, you know, area of the business.
Yeah.
So, but I do find myself like asking him all sorts of legal questions all the time. And then from there, like Making a Murderer came out shortly thereafter. And that was like another, you know, like kids go play with your, you know, toys, like I'll be back tomorrow kind of thing. And then the podcasting, like just really, I drive a lot for work. I go for runs a lot, so I'm outside a lot, and it just really took off. So to answer your question now, a long way around to get to the answer, which is, I listen to, I love True Crime Garage. I love Real Crime Profile. Do you listen to them with Jim Clemente and Laura Richards?
I know Jim Clemente, but yeah, I haven't listened to that. That's supposed to be really good.
They're super interesting. He was a former FBI profiler, and he writes for a show on CBS. And then Laura Richards is like, she's British and she's amazing. And Lisa Zambetti is a casting director. The three of them do this great podcast, and they cover a lot. Like, it's interesting because they cover a lot of cases, but they also cover like, you know, they covered Manhunter and that show on Netflix. Mindhunter. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they just talk about stuff that like also stuff that I watch. And so it's really interesting to hear their professional perspective on that stuff. And I'm trying to think of what other ones I love. And of course, Truth and Justice. Like, I love Bob Ruff. And I'm super interested. He's doing the Memphis 3 case right now, which if you haven't, they're really, I mean, you have young kids too, like me. It's sometimes that part's really hard for me. And yet even more like a mom, I think I just find myself like, what can I do to like, how do I make sure this does not happen to me?
Yeah, no, I get it. I don't listen to any cases with kids, but I do listen to that one because I know he handles everything so well and so respectful and does such a good job.
All right, guys, so you have heard the case of Michael Peterson and the owl theory that Melissa and Allie Sweeney believe.
Again, so judgy. So judgy.
Does the judgment come through in my voice that bad?
It really does.
We hope you guys have really enjoyed this episode. Allie, thank you so much. We could not think of a better person to come on and tell this story with us. You did such a good job, and I'm so glad you chose this case.
Well, thank you for coming on, and we will see you guys next week.
Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to the Moms of Murder podcast. Make sure to check back with us next week for a new episode. You can also find us at momsandmurder.com, where you can connect with us via social media.
Please make sure you subscribe and give us 5 stars, because giving us 4 stars would be a crime. Thanks so much.